Hello and welcome to Books to Africa on Air, where we bring interesting topics with a special focus on Africa. Today is a very special edition of this show because I'm very proud to say that I'm here actually with my own dad. Many of you will know him as Honorable Damishi Sango. He's a politician in Nigeria, but he's also many things, not just a politician, by the way. And today we're not talking about politics necessarily, we're talking about this book here, The Aten of Ganawuri, which is also the first book that Books to Africa has now published. Yeah, so Books to Africa has now published a first book, and this book has been written by the author, who is also here, Professor Gerald Berthoud, who actually has been to Ganawuri himself, in the 1960s, and has collected data and has put it all together into this amazing book that you see right here, which is, is immense. I can't tell you, you might not know where Ganawuri is, of course, but Ganawuri is my village, my community, and my dad is here. Obviously, he's a leader in my community, and Gerald Berthoud is here, who went to my community in the 1960s. So, I was just so excited to be here with both of you. So, welcome, gentlemen. So, where do we start? How was your journey? First of all, coming from Nigeria to England and coming from Switzerland to England. Maybe let's start with you first.
Well, when I was working in a museum, and I had to take care of the so-called African collection. And one day the director told me, we get money. You have to go to Africa. And of course, for a director of a museum was to make a collection of objects.
Right.
Of course, also, myself, I did not know where to go. I say, I have to go to Africa. Where?
Wow. So it was a random...
Fortunately, I had a friend who was in Jos, in the museum, working in the museum in Jos, and I told him, I am very embarrassed. I have to go to Africa. Do you think I can come on the plateau? There is something to do. And right away he answered to me and said, yes, no problem. Himself was working on a community on Rukuba. An American anthropologist working on the Uruguay, and for the rest it was quite open. Okay, I said, okay, I will come, and I arrived in Los Plateau, and I decided to go around to see where I could make my study. Whereas for me, a collection of objects was quite secondary.
Right.
In spite of the objective of a museum.
So how did you decide on Ganawuri of all the possible places?
When I went, maybe I don't remember exactly, although I was between the 60s and 80. The last time I was there was 83. But I roamed around the plateau, and I arrived in Aten, in the Ganawuri territory. I meet the chief, and the chief was quite favorable. I said by myself, why I could look at for something else.
Wow.
He is ready to accept me, to help me.
Wow.
He said, it's very good that you will make the history of our group, of community, and I decided right away, okay, it's where I will be.
Okay, just hold on there. There's a lot of information there. You say you arrive in Jos, and there's a whole tale about how you arrived in Jos. There's also very importantly at this point, you said you arrived in Ganawuri. Of all the villages and the communities you visited, that's where you felt welcome. The chief was happy to have you, and he's happy to help you. And then you decided, I'll do my research here.
Yeah.
And Dad, how does that make you feel? Hearing this?
Well, I think it's a very big a big opportunity, I would say, for me to meet Professor Gerald again. When he was doing the research in my community, I was a very young man then. Between 1965 and 70s, early 70s, I was primary school and then secondary school, the teachers called it then. And I could remember very clearly, very vividly, because
Really?
I grew up with my uncle the chief.
Oh,
So I was
you were the
actually,
chief.
so I was in the palace, so whatever was happening, I knew through the movement, the elders.
And what was the chief's name for those who do not know?
Chaiman.
Chaiman.
The name of the chief then was
And is it
Chaiman.
the same chief that
Yes.
received you?
It was Chaiman.
Chaiman
Wow.
who received
Yes.
me, yes.
So what I want to say is that when she did this research, the community kept on asking, why is the white man that came here to do a research? And
After he left.
Yes. What the product of his research? We want to know. Has he been able to put up something?
Wow.
Because I remember at that time, most of the elders that, our people migrated from Dagaran
Yes, which is the hills.
with the hill.
You can read that in the book.
Yeah, yes. And some of them, not some of them, but most of them, 90% of them who sat down with him day to day to give you the history, interview of
History,
sort of,
yes.
are people who
Actually lived in the
there
hills.
and migrated. So we know that he had original. We have to say he had original source.
Data, yeah.
Source.
Wow.
Of data.
That's
So
amazing.
for me now to meet him now in UK, I believe that if I tell my people that I've met the man finally,
You found him.
I found him, well, I'm sure they'll be, very delighted.
I'm sure a lot of people in Ganawuri will watch this video and they will see,
Yes, yeah.
But one thing I want to pick up on, it's really amazing is, the chief, Chaiman.
Yeah.
Because in many ways, you were hosted by him, and in many ways, you were hosted by him. And so this speaks to, in a sense, the character of the chief and what it meant to be a chief in those days. So maybe let's talk about that a little bit. What was your impression of Chaiman when you met him? And what did he tell you about what an African chief was?
Right away I discovered that first of all, he was really interested by what I would like to do. He was not just telling, well, you can stay and do what you want. No. And I remember quite well when I had sometimes, right in the beginning, some program to ask questions and people were reluctant to answer very often. It depends on which kind of question.
Of course. Yeah.
And the position of Chaiman was to tell, please, you have to answer. He's making our history. Is what
So
he
he
was telling
encouraged
very
people.
often. He's making our history. Although he was also interesting at the time about the present living, of the time. And then it was a great help for me. He was always helping me. And when I had problem, I could go to him. Right away, he said me, now you have your rest house here. You can.
So he gave you a house to stay
Yeah,
as well?
in the rest house, very good house,
Good house.
with one table, one bed, just in the middle of the territory. And then I am very pleased to have been in contact with such a chief.
And what would you say about?
Well, I will describe the late chief, who was not only my uncle but my mentor, as somebody that was very unique. He's somebody that loved his people. I love orphans. For there are so many orphans that grew up in the house.
Wow.
Yes, and he was very generous. And he was a kind chief.
See.
So, Chairman is a name that is a household name in our community.
Yeah, in Ganawuri.
Not just the community, among the entire Jos division.
Yeah,
It was somebody that was respected.
I see.
Yes.
And I mean, you mentioned, obviously, is it's interesting because when I did my research, I did some research about traditional rulers and their role. And some people say that the role of traditional rulers today in a modern democracy is dying away, and we don't need chiefs anymore. I mean, what do you think about politicians and chiefs? I mean, the power, the in the sense, who really runs their communities? Is it the politicians or the chiefs, and which one is better, if possible, if any?
What I learned by trying to understand the past of a community, which was a very difficult work, of course, but I work with 3 old men who have seen at that time the arrival of the British colonialists. And I could also observe a number of rituals. And what I discovered was a very complex and sophisticated system linking power and religion. And also a very interesting system because in fact they were organized in a way to avoid that only one could get all the power. And even they told me a story or a myth. They told me that in the far past they had only one chief, and they discovered that Fonyo or Chen did not grow. And then it's the reason why they decided that they should have several chief priests.
I see.
And it was a kind of to justify in a way the system, and it was also very wise, politically speaking.
To decentralize it and have
and to oblige all these 3 or 4 members of a political sphere to discuss, to negotiate, it was very wise. I mean, it's a kind of lesson. Maybe if I had to say what was the main point of my research, this was one of them. It's go quite beyond the Aten organization. It's a kind of lesson.
About the society.
About society.
And that, I mean, you were telling us the other day that you went into politics as a way to help your community. It wasn't just because, I mean, politics now these days seems everybody just wants to go into politics because they want to make money.
Oh, yes.
So for you, going into politics, it was about community, and you grew up, like you said, in the chief's house. So how does it work for you now? How do you see the chiefs and politics? Do you see them?
In fact, the chief made a prophetic statement about me.
That's the chairman.
Yeah, chairman.
At that time.
Had options. I'd either to go to Kefi or to go to School of Nursing, or to go to Gindri Teachers College.
So you could have been a nurse, a teacher, or
even Kefi would say I've been a teacher.
Yeah.
So his son, who became a chief later on, suggested I should go to Kefi. And he asked him why. So because it's a government school, will cost less. The chairman said, but Gindri, although it costs money, is a mission school.
So it was a Christian school?
It's a Christian school. So a lot of morals will be taught in the Christian school. It will make him a better human being. He said, who knows? We don't know who is coming to help the community. Maybe he would come and help the community, so it's better for him to go to Gindri.
Wow.
And his counsel prevailed, and it became prophetic. Because little did I know at that time that I would become a federal minister.
Wow, that's powerful.
You see, and as I've said, I went to politics to serve my community. If you go my history, from local government chairman to become a minister, my focus has been to because my own, community is disadvantaged in terms of modern facilities, modern development. So somebody had to sacrifice. And I went into politics for that. And I want to appreciate God that for the time I've been in politics, God has used me to do a few things for the community, which I give God the glory.
Yes, of course.
And the issue of traditional rulers, you see, the power of traditional rulers today has reduced. When the colonial administration came, they decided to use the chiefs.
So the British,
they call the indirect rule. So they used the chiefs, and the chiefs had a lot of powers. But with the changing form of our government, from parliamentary to presidential, today the chiefs have been sort of relegated to background. Chiefs are only now necessary during crisis time. You want to appeal to them to look at, to talk to their
people.
Their people, so I can maintain the peace. But I think that we should give them more role. I think that more role should be given to the kings, the chiefs.
Yeah, and I think that was one of the findings of my research as well. I feel like, there's immense power in the traditional institution, like you said. The fact that it is more deep rooted. It's not just an artificial institution that was maybe like implanted by the British or maybe post-colonial democracy that we've had, which for Nigeria it hasn't really worked. We've had civil wars, we've had ethnic conflicts, we've had all kinds of situations. Like right now, nobody knows even if the Nigerian state will survive. But when you go down to these villages and go to each ethnic group, you find there's a deeper connection between the people, their history, their identity, and their rulers, which is not the same, when you immediately try and do that across different ethnic groups. And, I don't know what you feel about that. Do you feel, what's the way forward for a country like Nigeria and many other countries in Africa that are so ethnic that they are struggling to make it as one state?
It's a very, in a way, it's a very difficult question, because here we are concerned with ethnic minorities. And if you look at Nigeria, you have the south, which Igbo and Yoruba, and you have the northern part, the Muslim Emirates. But if now we look at the system of these minority groups, we say in a way they were, again I am saying what I said just before, they were politically very wise in a way, we could maybe speak about a kind of a democratic system in a way, although we have not been too much romantic, because in any society there are peace, but there are also violence.
Exactly.
They are. They all speak about we have to consider life and death, but nevertheless, which is interesting, what I discovered myself is by studying Aten, I could transcribe and show a particular system, but this particular system was based on universal value.
Yes.
And again, in this way, you can say, we can start to think about human condition. And tell them, even if we study a very specific, very well-defined organization, like Aten, for instance, we discovered that this group, in fact, was trying to organize themselves, being obliged in a way to consider this universal value. And it's what I discovered again with my study, is that in fact they find a very particular original system where they have to take in the polarization between life and death, and between violence. I would not say war, because I don't think this ethnic minority in the past were not making war against each other, or have a conflict,
Yeah.
and violence, but not war. And they have to consider life and death, and peace and war. And we can see that all these different minorities, they find a very original orientation to respond in a way to this universal value.
I see. Very interesting. It's like a cross, life and death,
Exactly.
conflict and peace, and somehow you have to live between these
And to find the
polarities.
solution.
Interesting. I mean, there's so much detail in this book. When I was editing this book, and there's just so much detail about the Aten system and the the history, the organization, the ritual system. So I think people really have to buy this book to really get into so much of the details of this book, of the system you're trying to describe. But one thing I wanted to ask, you said earlier that people in Ganawuri were saying, "Where's the white man who has done the book?" And he's where's the white man who did the research? What has come? Where's the Sarah who has done the book? And so how do you feel now that you feel your research has now been published? How does that make you feel? And
Well, I wrote 4 or 5 articles in French. Then I was occupied by all kinds of other things, and I just let all my notes. I have many pages and pages of notes and documents, and they were there, waiting, I don't know what. And one day I received an email from you. And this was, I said, maybe why I keep all this material there. And I remember you told me, okay, do you accept we translate this paper? I said, yes. But when I read this paper, I was not satisfied at all.
Exactly, I remember, yes.
And I look at again my notes. I say, no, there is a raw material in these pages. I had to start again to do something else. Then I started to work. It was a very, very long work. It took maybe 2 years. I don't remember.
I know, yeah. It's taken almost 3 years now since.
Almost 3
fact,
years.
Let me tell you what happened. He is my dad actually that found an article, in French, and he said, have a look at this. So I was able to then, he said he suggested we try and find you, and then I then got on the internet, found you, made contact, and I was surprised that you responded. And then the work began. And in fact, most of the funding has come from my dad, so we're very thankful for that, to be able to, put in the work. We had to translate this from, many of you will not realize, but we had to take all Gerard's writings, which was in French, and translate. We had to pay to translate them into English. Then we had to put them together, and like you said, over 2-3 years of work, just going through it again and again and again and again and again to make sure it is good. And then pictures, there are over 40
pictures.
40 pictures, or 46, is it 40?
46, I think.
46 pictures, which Gerald took himself of Ganawuri. So, that alone, for that reason, you have to buy this book. If you want to see some of these photos, it's just amazing. They're all in black and white, but I think we're planning that when we do a book launch of this, and we're talking with Baba here about the book launch. What would you like to say as to people in Ganawuri specifically about this book and about what this means for us,
What I want to
for
say
our
that,
community?
yeah, what I want to say that finally we now have a book that somebody has put in some material and somebody who did some research. It's original to attain history. We now have an author and the book is here. I think it's very important that our younger generations should have this book. I read the book. When I picked this book and I started reading it, I couldn't drop it. because the material contained in this book, you cannot have it again.
True.
The old men, the people who gave this material are no longer alive. They are gone. And even the generation that we have now, even the oldest people that we have now, none of them was born at Dagra. So even me, at my age, almost getting to 70, I learned a lot from this book.
Wow.
What much more of the younger generation? You people need to read this book.
Absolutely.
And it will help you to be able to know the identity of your people. I think it's very important. I am so delighted to see this work because some of my colleagues, like Mr. Gan and others, they are no more, they have died. They have not seen this book. And for those of us, even those who help in translation, who are doing this, none of them is alive. Damguru and others, Sayuba, the late chief, none of them is alive to see this book. So those who are, lucky by God's divine, providence that we are alive to see it, I'm advising that this book should be, everybody should have this book in his house. Every Aten should have this book in his house for children to read.
Definitely.
But it become a primary source now where we can say, okay, look, this book can be quoted. This book will be libraries, the universities.
Yes.
And this local university will be
I feel that way as well.
It should be the library so that those who are doing research about the Aten, they can have access. In fact, when I read this book, you'll be able to see that, like the horse, the Birma of horse, and the Atakar and others, I mean, they are brothers with Aten. When you read this book, you see that why are we fighting? Why we're all brothers. If you read this, only this book, when you read it, you'll be able to have this sort of information and you'll be able to say,
what's the conflict about?
And also, there are certain things that don't seem to have moved.
So they haven't changed.
Things have not changed. And I think that the book should be able to push us a bit to say, look, why are we still where we were since 1967? What have we achieved as a people? Can we move?
Do you have an example of one of those things that you can mention?
Well, you see people still drinking, like drinking as people after their
drunkenness.
After their harvest. They want to spend time drinking. And that's all. They're not thinking of how do we move forward.
How do we take resources?
But yes, Acha, for example, if historically and culturally, like Aten and Acha, you cannot separate them. It's not difficult to separate them.
I mean, he said that Acha was the reason we decentralized our society in the first place.
So we need to now begin to look at other cash crops, like rice. There's no reason why we should still be importing rice in Nigeria. There's no reason why. But I want to commend the Aten because they have gone a bit forward in the production of rice. And the rice is the best.
In the country.
At least in the local rice, the best in the plateau and on the plateau.
Yes.
The best rice is Ganawuri rice. So we can go ahead and make it a major, cash crop so we can be able to have income to develop, the community. We need to build, even the university, we can build a university because education is one of the biggest weapons we can use to liberate yourself economically and intellectually. So we need, resources. So I think that this book generally is what I have seen in this book is that our young men need to read this book. And even our neighbors, they need to read this book. Not just a tale. It's not only meant for that tale.
Exactly. There's a lot of history of Plateau State, of the context of the state.
So we have been able to touch on that. He did a lot of research. I was able to quote other authors.
And thank you for that.
Yes.
Thank you. Because this is a lifetime work.
Yes.
Maybe just a final one. If we would like to find what are the symbols of the identity, of Aten identity.
Good, yes. What are the symbols?
I
of
would
Aten
say
identity?
right away that it is Chen, Acha, or Fonio, and a horse.
And the horse.
Horses. You know, and again you have here with Chen, Acha, you have life. And on horses it's rather hunting
Or
and fighting.
Which is killing. Both
Which
ways.
is killing. And again you have the life and death.
I see.
And
Interesting.
peace and fighting or violence or war. Maybe I will avoid.
Interesting. That's an interesting imagery for a Aten flag, perhaps. You know,
For
a
instance,
flag
yes.
or
For instance,
emblem or something like that. But that's very interesting. Just before we wrap up, I want, because we've been saying we want to read the book, and I know you have something else to add. Do you want to add?
I want to say that this issue, when you mentioned the issue of a horse, I want to inform you that the Aten still kill the horse.
So we still have
But
horses.
only we every December now or January, end of January, we celebrate the Uroda Grand. That is the Exodus from the Grand. It's been celebrated every year.
So that's the exodus
Also,
of our people from the hills
From the
to
hill out to the
the
plains.
hills.
Yeah. So on that day they have horse race.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And that day they display the culture that day, all the Aten culture they try to but I'm sure with this book, most of those will be able to see some area where there are missing links.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They will establish them in this book.
Yeah.
And I'm sure the next Urodagaran
Will improve upon.
will improve upon.
That would be amazing.
Yes.
And if you're wondering how you can get the book, we'll tell you. I mean, there will be a lot of information on the links in this video. And also, we are planning you can get the book on Amazon, wherever you are. But if you are in Nigeria and you want the book, you will have to wait until we do our book launch in Nigeria. But go on, follow the link, and we'll tell you how to stay informed. But just before we go, I want Professor Berthoud to read just a small portion of the book. Just so you can have an idea. We've been saying read the book, but if you're wondering what the book actually reads like, so I'll give him the honor to read the book briefly, and then just for you to have a taste of what the book is like. So when you're ready, you can have.
Well, the paragraph I have chosen is in a way what I said before about life and death and so on. But the ritual authority was clearly separated between life, chiefly symbolized by Fonio, and violent death caused by hunting and fighting. A double opposition was formed between, on one hand, life and death, and on the other hand, between peace and war. Maybe we could avoid war and say fighting. This double opposition was actualized in a dichotomy, all relative, opposing power and earth. The power explicitly related to relationship more or less conflictual between people. The earth related to the relationship between people and the natural environment, including wind, lightning, rain, drought, and insect. To the power were associated notions such as order and violence, conflict and death, linked to hunting and fighting. The earth was related to the necessity of protecting life's first gift, the ones of crop fertility and human fertility. First gift because it was a sun, I did not say before, but if we will speak about God in Aten traditional system, sun was the God. And this is the first gift.
Tanway.
Tanway. Yeah, Tanway. Tanway, yes.
Very interesting listening to that. Thank you very much, Professor Berthoud, for coming on air today. And listen, I'm so excited. So the book is out, The Aten of Ganawuri, a socio-political history of the ethnic minorities of Plateau State, Nigeria. I wish we could carry on talking for hours. There are so many things we could talk about. But I'm sure we'll have you back another time. We'll meet again in Nigeria when we do the book launch, and there will be many more occasions to discuss this book and many other issues. We know that right now Plateau State is going through a very troubled time, with crisis and killing all the time. But I'm sure there's a way we can return back to the home of peace in Nigeria. So anyway, thank you guys for watching today, and do get the book on Amazon. And thank you, Dad, and thank you, Professor Berthoud, for coming on air today. Thank you guys for watching. Bye. We've shipped 1 million books across 20 African countries.
And we aim to ship 1 million books every year.
This means shipping 50 containers to Africa every year.
Each container is carrying at least 20,000 books. That's 20 tons.
We can fund this by 2,000 people giving £10 a month, or
50 companies who will commit to send 1 container, and we can send 1 million books every year.